Sometimes it sucks. I'm not going to lie or sugarcoat it. I've slammed doors, hit walls, and thrown things across the room. I've put my hand up just wanting to hit someone. Anyone. No one warned me. There was no guidebook. This is my story. It's called Alzheimer's, and it affects your mind, body, and soul. 1 in 8 older Americans are diagnosed, and 95% of people diagnosed are above 65 years old. That leaves only 5% of people with early onset before they hit senior age. For half of the 5%, it's genetics. For the other half, an unexpected life awaits. It starts with minor memory loss, and as time passes, victims develop problems speaking, recognizing people, and eventually become fully dependent on others mentally and physically. This is life as I now know it, after the diagnosis. She was an independent and sharp woman, always choosing time with us over her work. She would run us to our soccer games and be the loudest mom in the crowd, whether we were winning or losing. She made friends everywhere. PTA, elevators in the doctor's office, everywhere. And she always brought her knitting. She knit for everyone and always gave people fancy scarves and baby blankets. And she loved Barbies. She taught us how to sew her own clothes and made matching ones for my dolls. She was my favorite homework distractor. She would always sneak me and my brother into the movies to see what she would call a double feature. Her tiny hands were always so cold, but she'd always say, "Cold hands, warm heart." Her and my dad were the dynamic duo. They were always so passionate and always dressing up for their little date nights. It was inspiring to see such a strong love. But when Dad was traveling for business, she had to be the mean one. We would throw tantrums and scream out for him. I could see her heart sink when she'd say, "You're gonna miss me someday." I never thought that moment would come so soon. At the time, I didn't understand what was happening. I was a senior in high school when all of a sudden the doctors started talking about the possibility of dementia. She started having problems with her memory, speech, and coordination, and lost her job. We knew something was off but didn't know how bad it would get. A year later, when my parents moved to Seattle, I came home on spring break to a mother who couldn't drive and no longer knitted. I spent the year with them and saw her get worse and worse. She started having problems with her keys, and in just months, she couldn't leave the house by herself. Her words continued to jumble, and it was harder and harder for me to understand. I cried myself to sleep most nights. My dad would spend hours trying to calm me down. I would yell in my prayers, "Why her, God? Why her?" I wanted to blame her even though I knew it wasn't right. She took care of me for 19 years, and now it was my turn. It came sooner than expected. I grew up faster than most, but God had been preparing my heart. 3 years after the diagnosis, by the time we moved to California, Mom could no longer be by herself. And soon, she was fully dependent on me and my dad. There were times when she would wander and try to talk to people, but they didn't have the patience to understand. Most of the time, they would just laugh. I wanted to yell at them, "Have a heart, it's not her fault." She would just respond with a smile and a laugh. I could see it take a beating on my dad, but he tried to never show it. I started to learn that this disease doesn't affect one person, it affects the whole family. And to all of the caregivers out there, you are not alone. Every day is a challenge. Most things make me sad. I want to share my world with her. I want her to know that I love her. A disease does not define a person. Those affected by Alzheimer's are still beautiful people in our world in the fight for their lives. My mom was always the most generous, loving, and selfless woman I had ever met. And although the dynamic of our relationship has changed, she still continues to teach me every day. She's taught me to cherish the moment because it's all we really have, and to love more than I ever knew I could. I now feel a duty to love and a duty to protect. This has taught me that life will throw you curveballs. You can choose to fight, or you can choose to love. You can choose to deny, or you can choose to protect. My mom may have Alzheimer's disease, but when she looks at me with her sparkling eyes, she's not a patient. She's just my mom. And I hear her voice echoing, cold hands, warm heart. Everyone thinks people like my mom don't make sense. But maybe we are the ones who don't make sense. Maybe we are the ones who need to listen.